I now call the Snoqualmie City Council meeting to order. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Mayhew, can you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask the city clerk to please take the roll call.
Councilmember Janes?
Here.
Councilmember Ross?
Here.
Councilmember Holloway is requested to be excused. Councilmember Mayhew?
Here.
Councilmember Lassay?
Here.
Councilmember Sundwall?
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Here.
Mayor Larson?
I am here. We have a motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Holloway from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second as stated. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented tonight?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as stated. Is there any discussion, Councilmember Shepherd?
I would like to take off the warrants.
Okay. Any other items for discussion?
Point of
Councilor Mayhew?
clarification, take them off the consent agenda or take them off the agenda
I
entirely?
assume she means off
Oh,
the consent agenda.
agenda.
Thanks for the clarification. Any other discussion, council? All right, with that one amendment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, with that, we'll move on to public hearings, presentations, proclamations, and appointments. And a couple of things that are not on the agenda I want to mention real quick is to ask our Public Works Director, Dan Marcinko, to come forward at this time and recognize a few of our Public Works staff that have shown up here tonight. With great reluctance, they came here. We wanted to make sure and recognize a few of them for the extraordinary work they did during the snowstorm event.
They think they're not going to step up here. Don and Dusty and Brian all three of them are here. Come on up, guys. Come on.
Come on, guys. Everybody wants to see you. Yeah.
Been here 10 years, and I've coming out of Chicago, I've seen quite a few snowstorms, but trying to see guys like this that have actually stepped up. And, you know, first of all, it's really is a community event that helped us out. From the mayor and you guys with the council, having an emergency declared, working with the fire department and the EOC and the police department, and then social media and how they've communicated with us, worked with us, text message and emailed, all kinds of things. But for these guys behind me to turn around and step up and do what they did was just absolutely amazing. They really stepped into the role. I always forget, Dusty and Don have been here for quite a while. There's like almost 40 years standing there in front of you. So they've been around, they know the community, they know the roads in and out, and they know exactly how to handle everything. Don's been a mechanic and head fleet supervisor, fleet and facilities, and he took care of all the equipment as it broke, gathered his crew together to work with Dusty and his entire team. How many guys total would you say, Brian, that we had? I had everybody, so 32 guys, 32 people and 6 contractors. So for them to organize this and orchestrate it and have it turn out like it did is absolutely, there's no words. I mean, it really, they've just done an outstanding job and really did a great job for you guys and made the community really proud for what they've done.
Thanks, guys.
Brian's my ops manager, so he thinks he's going to go away quiet.
I just echo what Dan said. It was a team effort all the way around, and we have a lot of good people dedicated to make it happen. And I was proud to be part of that team and, you know, come through for the community, get everybody back mobile.
He's only been here for a year.
Yeah.
A little over a year, so he's really stepped into the role. Done very well.
But I'd lived here 7 years in Snoqualmie, so I knew the roads to start with, which helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, Don or Dusty, you know, a lot of folks are throwing kudos to the leadership, including myself. I'm saying, hey, the mayor was mostly just trying to dig his own alleyway out. I credit, I mean, the city's really blessed, and I think you guys would concur too, in having, there's a lot of key decisions that have to make to throw a lot of resources and things and counseling meetings and all that. And having a city administrator and a public works director, both of whom spent their entire careers in Minnesota and Illinois before coming here. It really was a blessing, but I know, but you guys are the boots on the ground that were really doing the work out there. You know, a lot of lack of sleep and away from families. I'd love to hear from the two of you. I know you don't really want to speak. Not necessarily a shower praising yourselves. Talk about the crews and the guys you're working with down. I know you're keeping all the vehicles moving and rolling. It's a lot of fleet to keep fixed. But if you guys just say a few words about the guys that you're working with and what you saw them doing out there. And here's the reason why. You want to plant some seeds, because I noticed Dana McCall and Living Snoqualmie and some others started this little competition where they want folks in the community to write stories about who was our biggest snow hero here, and someone's going to get a free trip to like the Bahamas or something. So this is your chance to make a pitch for someone if you want. Yeah. Oh, Larry just walked in too, so kudos to Larry too.
What? I want to say that my staff on the fleet facility side of things kept all the equipment. We got stuff that's 20 plus years old. In the snow, the removal equipment is key. So there's a lot of our stuff that's 21, 22 years old. There was some equipment that had already been past its useful life. It was getting repaired as the snow event came on board. So we didn't get to utilize that equipment. So what I ask is that we let our ER&R system function as, you know, we bring it towards you. Think about what we're asking. And that's all I have.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do we have enough 3/4-ton pickup trucks there?
Well, I was pretty impressed with the way the guys responded. You know, we were asked to cover the shifts for 24/7 for almost 10 days. And so that takes away from our own families. And we have issues at home. People with driveways that they can't get into, and gutters are being torn off and power's out, and you know, we have things that but we put you guys first. And for me, I'm really proud of the team that I work with. Our guys, there was very few guys who said, no, I'm not available. We were here to serve, and I think everybody understands that's our role here with the city of Snoqualmie, is to serve this community. And I think all the guys are really proud that that's what we are about.
I got a real kick out of, I was out shoveling my front walk, and one of the plow drivers pulls over to say hi, Mayor, and it's of all people, Phil, our tree arborist from the Parks Department. So.
You didn't bury your
Which a lot of
tree?
people recognize, so they got a kick around the tree arborist is driving around plowing streets. So it's
Well, I was trying to give on-the-spot updates on Facebook of, you know, the intensity of the storms and the different things, and I was hoping people would get the idea of just the seriousness of the event, and yet it was still, we tried to keep it lighthearted.
Festy.
Not big on public speaking, but I concur with Larry that our crews stepped up. They really did everything in their power to make sure that we got jobs done as well as we possibly could. There were many of us that went round the clock 2-3 days straight, maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep total, and just kept going. We work for this community. They are our home. They are our people. We do what we have to do.
Thank you all. You guys did a great job. You should be very
Dusty's
proud.
being a little modest, but we'll be the first ones to tell you that the first shift, we were trying to struggle get that through. He was here 24 hours, 25 hours, and we finally had to just send him home and get some sleep. And he actually, he just wouldn't quit. You know, he really did an outstanding job. Great example for himself, the crews that he represents. So,
And your wife made you shovel your driveway when you got home, right? After 25 hours. Yeah.
thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all.
I have a question.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So is there any equipment that would have been helpful that we wouldn't have realized we needed until this event happened? I've heard.
I'd love to speak about that.
An all-inclusive park.
No, this has nothing to do with parks. So after the event, we realized that we don't have these kind of events very often. But there's certain pieces of equipment that were lacking. And snow blowers are a couple that, wow, when we plow our snow, we block people in, and there's no way to move that snow. So we're looking at purchasing some snow blowing equipment that would be able to move into, we'll be able to move into some of the intersections and just blow that snow out of the way and it'll be gone. And there's just a few things, but you know, I've worked here 21 years and this is only the second time in my career that I've seen an event like this, but it's always nice to be prepared. I'm sure you guys loved being the example when you're hearing about what's going on over North Bend and what we're providing here at Snoqualmie. Yeah. So, you know, there you go. But there is a few pieces of equipment that we're looking at that we'll probably be bringing forward to you guys. And we hope that you guys say, hey, yeah, we'll support that because that's who we are. That's what we support.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
All right. And I appreciate you guys letting yourselves be dragged in here for some recognition too. So that's great. Okay, well, since we're doing some nice recognitions, I'm really pleased to also recognize someone who's worked hard to, on a fairly quick basis, get their certified municipal leadership. Councilmember Catherine Ross just received notice from the Association of Washington City that she achieved her 30 credits to get her CML. So congratulations, Councilmember Ross. And then another matter that's come to my attention as the evening began is we have, I think, at least 5 or 6 students here from outside. Could you guys raise your hands to say who's here from outside? So I got about 5 of them here. They're excited to be here. As I understand, they probably might be required to be here for a civics class or something like that. So we often have scouting groups and others that come in here for like their citizens badges. So what we always do is we give you guys kind of there's all kinds of rules of decorum, Robert's Rules of Orders, and how many times people can speak and who can say what when. But because you guys are doing a civics thing or a citizenship thing tonight, we kind of give you a carte blanche. You can at any point in the meeting raise your hand and say, hey, I'm confused about what's going on, or ask a question of the council or procedural issues or topical ones. It's a fairly light agenda comparative tonight, so I'm going to ask everyone to try and step it up and make it as exciting as possible for them, if we can. It is being videotaped too, guys, so. All right, with that, I'd like to move on to appoint David Lesk to the Arts Commission, position number 2, for a term ending January 31st, 2020, and Sam Insalicko, Arts Commission, position number 5, for a term ending January 31st, 2022. May I have council confirmation?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Did you miss Twin Peaks Day proclamation, or is that something that's been removed from the agenda?
I'll be getting to that in a moment.
Okay, going to do appointments first. Okay.
Oh, I saw a little different order than in my notes, yeah. So may I have a motion to confirm as stated?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to confirm as stated. Any discussion, council? Or any of these 2 people here tonight? Oh, there we go. Could you, why don't you get up and say a little bit about yourself, or what's your interest in the Arts Commission?
Mr. Mayor?
It's a tough job interview.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. Well, first of all, I'm honored to become part of the team. One of the things that was extremely important to me in my retirement, which went into effect last year, although I still do some consulting work, was to give back to the community, and it's something I've never had much of an opportunity to do since I had international responsibilities with some major medical companies, traveled around the world, and wasn't home a whole lot. So now I get to pursue that dream of giving back and becoming more a part of the community. My wife and I just moved here from Sammamish in October to be closer to my daughters and to our grandchildren. And we're excited to be a part of the community. I'm excited to be a part of this team. I have extensive background in corporate training and customer training for companies, medical companies primarily, and high-tech companies. I've worked 30 years in that field. And prior to that, I actually had a master's degree in the theater. So the fact that I was able to make a living at all still surprises my mother. So I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Okay, well, thanks for stepping up, yeah. The Arts Commission salary is about similar to your theater
Yeah.
payments, probably.
No worries.
All right. Thank you. Any discussion, council? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. With that, we're going to move on to recognizing Twin Peaks. Whereas the television show Twin Peaks, created by Mark Frost and David Lynch, debuted in 1990 and changed television forever by breaking new ground and inspiring numerous other television shows. And whereas Twin Peaks continues to captivate television viewers worldwide with scenes filmed in Snoqualmie and the Snoqualmie Valley that emphasize the natural beauty and history of our region, and whereas Twin Peaks continues to draw tourists year-round to Snoqualmie, the Snoqualmie Valley, and the greater Seattle area for more than 28 years, and whereas Twin Peaks has placed many Snoqualmie and Snoqualmie Valley locations, landmarks, and businesses into popular culture, including Snoqualmie Falls, Mount Si, Olali State Park, the Salish Lodge and Spa, the Snoqualmie Lumber Mill, and the Dirtfish Rally School, the Centennial Log, Reinig Road, Tweed's Cafe, the Roadhouse Restaurant and Inn, Smoky Joe's Taverns, E.J. Roberts Park, Mount Si High School, Reinig Bridge, the former Brook Theater, Meadowbrook Bridge, and the Northwest Railway Museum, Snoqualmie Depot. And whereas Twin Peaks returned to television again in 2017, challenging viewers anew and garnering ongoing critical acclaim and award nominations, and whereas February 24th is celebrated by Twin Peaks fans worldwide as the day when the character of Special Agent Dale Cooper arrived in the town of Twin Peaks. Now, therefore, I, Matthew R. Larson, Mayor of the City of Snoqualmie, do hereby and proclaim Sunday, February 24th, 2019 to be Twin Peaks Day and invite people everywhere to celebrate. Obviously, it's a little bit late, but this was supposed to be 2 weeks ago when we had to cancel it due to a snowstorm, but still want to make sure and recognize that. And we have a gentleman here to accept the proclamation today, who also often involved in local Twin Peaks. If you want to, Carl, if you want to say a few words.
You really are filling time, aren't you? I actually would take the opportunity to say thank you for letting us make this official. This is something that fans were celebrating unofficially for years, and they would come into town. But by making it more official, it's actually drawing more fans here. I spent the whole day yesterday going to small businesses in Falls City, North Bend, and Snoqualmie, bumping into tourists from the greater Seattle region and from other countries and other parts of the U.S. And it was wonderful to meet tourists and see that they were coming here and seeing that the local businesses were reaching out and had signs in the shops recognizing the proclamations. Some of the shops had free coffee, free donuts, and it helped create a welcoming environment for tourists, which I think is wonderful to have tourists here in the winter. The one other point I would just sort of throw in is North Bend's Visitor Center was a nice little hub to bring in tourists. If we could have a Snoqualmie Visitor Center that could have some Twin Peaks type things in it, then we would get a little more foot traffic in our downtown. It was clear to me that North Bend had a better foot traffic yesterday than we did. So,
All right. Carl, thank you. Appreciate the work you do to make it a more welcoming environment for those tourists. And you nailed it on the head. We do want to try to do more to emphasize those shoulder seasons and to draw tourists through town, support local businesses. Great. Thanks for taking the time to come in tonight. All right. And then also want to introduce Marilyn Gomez as our new IT project manager. PJ, do you want to get up and introduce or bring her forward? Either you or Marilyn could say a little bit about herself and background.
I'll just read an introduction to. Marilyn comes to us with a background in accounting and IT, born and raised in Seattle. She started her career working for King County as a bookkeeper back in the days when one could easily have a picnic and swim in the pool at the bottom of Snoqualmie Falls. I don't know how long ago that was. An alumni of both the University of Washington and Seattle University, she loves the Huskies and Red Hawks, but only enjoys the Washington Cougars from a distance. Her career has taken several detours managing projects through both public and the private sector. In 2008, she decided to make the transition from accounting to IT officially by earning her project management certification, and has happily not booked a journal entry ever since. You'll often find her with earbuds, listening to music that she'll be using later that evening in the cardio and yoga classes she teaches in the evening. Marilyn Gomez.
Yep. Great. Welcome aboard, Marilyn.
To say something?
Only if you want to, Marilyn, but welcome aboard. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said. All right, and then last but not least, I'd like to appoint Anne Marie Soto, actually, before I do this, I want to do, for those that have not heard, after 11 rather nerve-wracking days, we did finally get good news that Bob Sturbank kind of had a miraculous rebound and is well on the way to recovery, so he's doing quite well. Bob, I don't know, is he still in the hospital, or is he out yet, or?
No, he's out. He has been out since, I think, last Tuesday, about a week ago, I believe.
All right. So I'm being told, I'm not sure why it was in my notes, but I'm being told we need to, probably as a matter of order, need to pass the contract with Kenyon Deason prior to confirming Anne Marie as our interim city attorney. So if we could just jump down real quick to under consent agenda. Well, heck, let's just do the consent agenda, then I'll come back up. All right, for consent agenda, all items listed below have been acted by one motion. Action items include minutes for the January 14th, 2019, final revised council meeting minutes, January 15th, 2019 workshop meeting minutes, and the January 28th, 2019 council meeting minutes. Warrants have been removed from the agenda, or removed from the consent agenda, excuse me. Other approvals include Agenda Bill 19016, First Amendment to Legal Services Agreement with Kenyon Deason. Do I have a motion, council?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. Is there any member of the audience that would like to comment on these items prior to discussion? All right, seeing no one move forward. Councilmember Mayhew and then Councilmember Lassay.
Just two small items on the January 28th meeting minutes. One is that on the first page, under approval of agenda, it says moved by Councilmember Lassay, second by Councilmember Mayhew to pull agenda bill from the agenda. I think there's meant to be an agenda bill number there. If that could just get filled in, it's just a administrative thing. I don't think it needs to hold up the.
So you want to approve it with the understanding that that will be corrected?
Corrected.
Okay.
And then also approve it with understanding that on page 2, under the list of council committee and liaison appointments, under community development, is there a second line, council members Lassay and Jean. I think there's an S on the end of his name, so maybe we could approve it with that S added.
Okay. You got those, Judy? Councilmember Lassay.
I just wanted to point out that the workshop meetings of January 15th do not have any comment on what was occurring at the meeting. All it does is a listing of the goals and objectives, not that we spent some time prioritizing those items. I thought that might be important to note that we did more than just list the goals and agenda. Also, I wanted to point out that it states on that there under next steps that the council will review the smarting before council retreat on February 8th. Council is yet to receive that smarting of the goals and objectives to be able to have that discussion.
Oh, okay, yeah. Councilmember Lassay, are you requesting some amendment prior to approval here?
Not requesting any amendment, just noting that we have not received the information that we were promised.
Okay. All right, any other discussion, council? All right, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. So back to presentations. At this time, I'd like to appoint Anne Marie Soto of Kenyon Deason, PLLC, as acting city attorney. Council may have confirmation. Or a motion to confirm.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to confirm Anne Marie Soto as our interim city attorney. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this prior to just further discussion? Seeing no one move forward. Any further discussion, council? Councilor Jean?
I'm reminded that the acting city attorney has been with us before. She's functioned in that capacity, so she doesn't come to us essentially new. She's familiar with our city and activities.
Okay. If there's no further questions or discussions, then all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, with that, we will move down to Reports, Parks and Public Works Committee, Agenda Bill 19011, Task Order Number 38 with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, Sandy Cove Park Bank Protection and Restoration, Phase 2.
Point of order. Do we need to vote on position 5 for Arts Commission?
Yes. I was pretty sure I read that in.
I heard David's name, but I didn't hear Sam's name.
I read both.
They were both.
Yeah. Oh.
Only he was here to comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what, because only one was here to comment, that maybe gave you the impression. But.
Thank you.
Okay, again, under reports, Agenda Bill 19011. Do I have a motion and a second?
Second. Oh, sorry, motion, whatever you said. So moved.
I need a second, folks.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 19011 as sort of stated by Councilmember Sunwell.
Do you want me to read it in?
Please.
Task Order 38 with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants will provide design and permitting for the Sandy Cove Park and Meadowbrook Lift Station bank stabilizations and 2 outfalls. NHC Task Order 38 will provide deliverables for $448,136 within the amount adopted in the 2019-2020 city budget. Move to approve Task Order 38 with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, Sandy Cove Park Protection and Restoration Phase 2, and authorize mayor to sign.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 19017 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Sorry, I mangled it up.
I know.
That was on me.
I was going to let you go, but.
Okay. That was very kind of you. All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? All right, seeing no one step forward. Any discussion, council, on this item? Councilmember Jeans?
So we lose bits of that park every winter. I mean, the river is taking that park from us annually. And so I'm hoping, and remind me when this consultant will get going so we can take action on preserving the park.
So coming out of Public Works Committee, the committee asked me to prepare a short 5 to 10 minute presentation on this park, partially because some items have been changing and the project's been taking a while to develop. Also because we've had a lot of new council members come forward since some of the original studies on that park were completed in 2013, 2014. So because you asked the question right up front, this is slated for construction in 2021. I'll talk about why that timeline is needed. But yeah, I'll just get started on the presentation and then we'll see if I fill in some other blanks. So, not sure where to point. Okay, cool. So, Sandy Cove Park, what we're doing, why we're doing it, the public benefits, and its long-term goals. Primarily, the park is going to focus on producing 100% designs for bank stabilization, where we're having some continuing erosion long-term, and that's been accelerating over time. This agenda bill also includes some other partial design components. That includes a partial design of the Keene Street outfall at 30%, 100% of the River Street outfall, and a partial design of some potential bank stabilization needed. This is called the Meadowbrook Lift Station improvement in our utility CIP. It's a little bit further away from that lift station, but still that's the area it's intended to remedy. The reason that we're doing a little bit seemingly hodgepodge of the projects is that we're trying to do all of these river projects as a group. We can basically gain substantial cost savings, not just for river survey and modeling, but primarily for permitting. We can save roughly, we're planning on doing this permitting actually bundled with a project that council has already approved, the record office revetment. That's going to basically take that project and these projects, go into the Army Corps of Engineers and permit it all at once. We think we'll save roughly $40,000 by permitting these all together. That permitting process also adds project flexibility. So Army Corps can basically say, we want you to do some added vegetation, or we might have issues with no-rise analysis. By having these multiple sites, we actually have more flexibility so that if one site's very constrained and we can't provide mitigation at one site, we can actually propose it as part of another site and sort of toggle those needs between the different project areas. Sandy Cove, Bank and River Street, they're both going to 100%. You really only need to get to 30% to enter the Army Corps permitting stage. We're also not 100% certain that we need full designs of the King Street outfall and the Walnut Street bank. So this basically provides coverage to get us to that 30% stage and really understand what's needed and see if we need to move forward with additional design. But this gets us through that permitting process. So that's really the thrust of this agenda bill. So Sandy Cove specifically. Sandy Cove, all rivers move, and our river tends to move a little more than most. We have fewer bank stabilizations, and we tend to have a lot more fine silts and sands. So from 1944 to 2010, averaged about 2.2 feet of movement a year. But 2010 to 2013, that erosion steeply accelerated from 3 to 16 feet a year, or 10 to 50 feet over a period of 3 years. So there's a lot of reasons why this must be. The primary theory of why this is happening at this park is we lowered and widened the weir in 2012, or rather PSC did, and that accelerated the water. So it's moving faster through this opening. And because it was moving faster, it was able to pull a whole bunch of gravel from upstream. And it's positioned a growing gravel bar right off of Sandy Cove. And the water, as it comes through, hits the gravel bar and then shoots right into Sandy Cove. So it's both moving faster and it's putting more pressure on that bank. Also, because we've maintained it as an accessible park for the public, there's not strong root structure there to hold those sands up. That problem is exacerbated when we have flood events that saturate a rather steep bank, makes it heavier, and you tend to have sloughing off at a rapid motion. So that's why we're having, that's what the consultants believe we're having, that's the issue they believe that's causing accelerated erosion. So you can kind of see that root wad on the left and the right. That's really the rate of erosion that we saw in that period of time. And that pressure is continuing in this area. I don't believe that root wad is even still there. I think it's since been carried downstream. So the reasons why we want to protect this bank is there's about 100 to 120 feet away. That's when you get the entrance of the park beginning. The roadway also contains utilities underneath it. That's a pretty big reason for us. In addition, it's a community asset, sometimes because it's in disrepair. I don't think people really think of Sandy Cove that way, but when you think about it, there's really only 2 parks within the city where you can take a look at or access the river. And this is the one which really lets you get close. In addition, since we've been putting a lot of effort and money towards the Riverwalk project, this is really could be a gem along that tourist attraction, but it won't be if we don't protect it. And the last reason, it's an economic asset. Actually, it's 1 block from your main downtown intersection. If we can retain the park and eventually kind of spruce it up a little bit, it really becomes more viable for events. And it's right off of your historic business district. So it has a lot of potential, but it won't if it goes away. This is going over the reasons for the bank erosion, which I've already touched on. So the other thing that we're concerned about is this side sort of channel bar that's starting up over here. I'm going to go to an aerial of it. You can kind of see how this back channel area has been growing. This is about, I think it's 200 feet wide, and it's really been eating into Sandy Cove. So one of our concerns is this might create a overflow channel that actually might cut through the park. And then you're actually going to be starting to move the river back against this area, which puts it closer to railroad, as well as some of these private residences. So part of one of our goals in this project is to really take a look at where we want water to overflow when it floods and make sure that we're channeling it in an area that we feel is safe and comfortable if we have to lose parts of the park. So that's another concern that we're really building in as we look, because this isn't just how does this perform during normal river flows, it's how does this perform during floods. So when we studied this last in 2013, we came on it was myself and Kamal Mahmood at that time, a project engineer, and we were asked, what do you think? We were talking with the consultants, and they said, well, what do you want us to gear towards? And The second cheapest option was roughness logs, and that's basically what you see here. These are logs with boulders that are anchored into the ground, and it basically helps sediment to accrue over time and basically helps to very slowly and very gradually reverse a little bit of the erosion and hopefully stop the erosion from continuing. It's a less expensive option. It can have a shorter lifetime if those boulders that are anchored down, if you have a hard flood flow that's very intense, you can sometimes lose some of those improvements, which is hard when you're putting a lot of money into something. You want to make sure that it stays put. It's slightly less attractive. It's not quite as appropriate for an urban park. And the other issue is it doesn't deflect flood flows. And so since that time, Jeff Hanlon came on board, who's had a lot more experience with rivers and stormwater projects. He really read through a lot of the materials and the appendices, and that expertise in continued talks with the consultant really yielded this other option that had been explored previously. This is really going after spurs or groins with soil reinforcement. A groin or a spur is this isn't a spur, but I couldn't find a picture of a spur. But this is a log jam, but it's very similar. It's basically creating an engineered triangular structure that water will hit and then deflect again. So it's actually deflecting flood flows and will, over time, it's believed it might actually begin to erode that gravel bar, push it downstream a little bit. So it will actually push back against those forces. They tend to stay in place a lot longer. And then that soil reinforcement, especially, you have to do logs over that so it doesn't degrade over time, but you can do additional plantings with that, and it's a bit more of an attractive and long-standing solution for an urban park environment. So this is the alternative that we're moving towards in this study. It's something that's the previous study had begun to explore, and we think that for the environment we're looking at and wanting to make sure that the improvements stay, that's really where we're headed towards in this upcoming study. So there's some additional subtasks for this piece. There's a risk assessment of the channel. This is both something that we think will come up in permitting. We've had Snoqualmie tribe members say before, if you put something in the river, you should know what those improvements will do downstream or to the opposite bank. That will actually yield that information. It'll also let us know what's happening at some points downstream if we're having increased erosion of some of the houses further north of this improvement, which we'd want to know from a public safety standpoint. There's also flood storage evaluation, especially for that no-rise analysis. We might need to be able to put some water elsewhere, so that's a bit of a backup option that will help yield some of those beginning analyses. There's a small part they put in there. I didn't actually ask for it at first, but they did put $15,000 towards construction support. This won't be activated unless we proceed to construction. However, that is a valuable thing that eventually we would ask council to support if we move towards construction, because these NHC is expert on these types of improvements, and we want to make sure that it's done right. So this project is in council-approved utility CIP that was already done last year. As I said before, it's the Sandy Cove and Meadowbrook lift station stabilizations. So with the approval of that CIP, we actually have sufficient appropriation in this upcoming year to fund the design, and the costs are below the project estimates that were slated for 2019. So I think that actually concludes it.
Can you go back to the map at the
Yes.
very beginning that showed the kind of the combining of all the projects
Yep.
together?
This one.
That shows the way, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So you're combining the Sandy Cove bank stabilization, the King Street outfall, River Street outfall, and
Yeah.
then what seems to be completely random, although I sort of get it, is the Walnut or the Meadowbrook bank stabilization.
Yeah.
And that, everything in here was part of the CIP that was approved last year?
Yes.
Including the Walnut,
Yeah, this is what they called the Meadowbrook lift station. So it's a little bit further upstream of the Meadowbrook lift station. And the danger here isn't actually to the lift station itself. It's actually that there's a sewer line that runs along Walnut Street. And our concern is that the erosion is beginning to eat both towards that road and the sewer line that's under it. So they're tasked with basically looking into that. But that's what's called the Meadowbrook Lift Station, which I think is actually more over here. So this one is actually, this one's also a part of the CIP. It's the, that one's technically part of the River Street Bank Stabilization Project, also in the CIP. But we're bundling it in this project because this one we're doing with King County, and this one, it's our outfall, so we're responsible for designing that.
Is that the one we approved on
Yeah,
the 28th? That's
yeah,
the revetment?
That's the, yeah.
Okay.
It's the record office revetment or the River Street Bank Stabilization.
Any other questions or discussion, Council? Councilmember Ross and Councilmember Shepherd.
I'm going to say, from your presentation, I think you've answered like every single question I had. But basically, to sum it up, you're basically saving the park, right? Because eventually it's going to.
Hopefully, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's the whole purpose of trying to do this, is to save one of our community assets.
Yes.
Mayor Shepherd.
So I'm looking at NHC's document here. They mentioned 2 kickoff meetings, and the second meeting, you talk about including city staff and other project stakeholders. And I know that there's some residents that feel very connected to this topic. So can we include some of those residents that would be very concerned about topics such as the floodway?
Probably. We might even do an additional meeting. So yes, I think that it would be good to collect stakeholder input, especially of interested in nearby residents. It might be at that meeting. It might be a separate time with city staff and I'd have to figure out if we want to do it right at the get-go or after we have. So the two kickoff meetings, we're going to delay one until we get design alternatives started, and that's probably when we would want to talk with citizens. So I think we could build in something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, so I thought I understood this project, but now I'm confused. So this entire $448,000 is being funded from Fund 417?
Yes.
Which is our utility rates.
Right.
So this is coming from our
stormwater
utility rates, stormwater rates.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand why are what's the connection that causes stormwater rates to fund Sandy Cove Park?
So the two things that one of the primary mechanisms that has accelerated or that caused the accelerated erosion was during flood, basically. And so it's connected to your flood repairs. So this is not an uncommon nexus that different cities apply stormwater funds towards bank stabilizations, because it's really that saturation from flood waters, which are often caused during storms, that cause this sloughing in this issue. So I know it seems a little bit disconnected, but the connection's been established by other cities.
No, I'm just trying to follow through in my mind. So we're going to raise our utility bills to pay for the Sandy Cove Park, and we're not going to take that from other tax sources. We're going to take it from our utility bills.
The utility bills, so this has already been approved. This has been part of the plan for several years. So those utility bills have already been raised in anticipation of this.
And so this is on the Sandy Cove. All of this is on that list of utility CIP that you referred to earlier?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I ran across a lot of terms I've never heard before.
Yeah.
This is very interesting.
It's very educational, sort of.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So the word thalweg, and I thought, wonder if that's a typo. So I looked it up. No, that's a real word.
That is. Sounds like a, what is it, Viking god. But yeah, no, the deep part of the river. Yeah.
So I was just curious about the pilings that are going to go into the river Thalweg, not exceeding 80 feet for the total drilling, but 2 pilings.
Right.
What is that? I couldn't understand what it was that they would be doing.
Right. So I don't know if they're doing it. I don't think they're doing a boring in the river. They must be doing it adjacent to a position in the river, but it's basically testing the different soil stability, because you might need a pile reinforced design. So basically, if you can't anchor whatever improvements you're doing properly with other materials, you might actually have to drive piles deep into the ground.
You're talking metal rods are going down into the dirt?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is if other materials, so metal tends to have a bit better stability over time if you use something like wood next to a wet river environment for those piles, it would do what nature does with wood, which is eat it. So this is an option that will be explored to make sure that whatever we spend money on to save the park will stay there.
It's the park is well named.
It is.
Sandy Cove. It's
Yeah.
kind of hard to anchor sand if you've ever been to a beach and try to hold it in place as the waves come in. But
Yeah. Even the roughness logs had anticipated the potential to need those pilings going in. But one of the mechanisms that's also looked at is basically you do it with giant boulders. So.
Any further questions or discussion, council? All right. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Any other report for Parks and Public Works Committee?
Not at this point.
Point of
Councilor
order,
Jeans.
Mr. Mayor. At the beginning of our meeting, we have citizens' comments,
That's correct.
and maybe we went past that and
We, in fact, did go past that. That's my sorry for that. I planned to just kind of treat it like comments at the end of the meeting. We could do it now if the council would prefer. But okay. Yeah. So at this time, we'll have citizens, sorry, we had some glitch on the software of my notes this evening.
Definitely Twin Peaks Day. Things have gotten a little weird.
That's right. So at this time, we'll provide time for citizens to comment on items not on the agenda. But first, a few ground rules. The Snoqualmie citizens who are not present here tonight, or all 13,500 of them, have a right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of the city in an efficient and orderly manner. Therefore, we are required, or it necessitates us having to restrict the comments to 3 minutes each. Please wait to be recognized and come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members. Please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. The council will simply quietly and respectfully listen to your concerns. And last, please respect the decorum of the proceedings, as all due respect will be afforded to you. And so with that, would anybody like to speak? Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard, Southeast. I don't have a lot of time, but I really did want to quickly say regarding the snow plowing, I was someone that would watch them frequently, and I would be leaving at all hours, and I would get very upset when I would see people criticizing them, because it's one thing when you're doing the very, very, very best you can, and that's everything they were doing. And I would go on, but I'm going to lose my time, and I have a lot to cover. So over this past year, I've really been reflecting where we've come as far as merchants and the city and council, and where it's been kind of a year in review, and where are we now. A year ago, I came to you all for help, and some of those things that we really need help with immediately is signage, getting tourists to places like the Ridge Retail Center that were never supposed to have tourists getting up there, the irregularities in standards, design standards, and then the tourism plan. I get really worried when I hear Riverwalk presentations, because I feel as though that we're no closer now to where we were, only we own a bunch of houses. And I just really need you guys to understand that time is of the essence for those kind of things. I feel there's a big disconnect after my year in review, and I know that the tribe has a liaison with the council. I'd really like to see maybe if there could be one with the council and merchants, so that we could be discussing things, because some of the disconnects over the year that I've noticed are that most of the city employees, council members, EDC members don't even have the slightest idea of what costs and expenses are when I ask them in operating a business in our city. Big disconnect on what volume is needed in standard retail to be successful. You know, with my year in reflection, 13 years after I started my build out, I'm one of 5 original businesses on Center Boulevard, one of 5. Myself and the Woodmen are the only original restaurants in all of Snoqualmie that haven't sold or just closed up. So I really feel that I'm living out what Mark McDonald said would happen to council and planning in 2008 if the business park was to be zoned for retail. I am living it out, exactly what he said would happen. And like I said, time is of the essence. This is not where I expected us to be as merchants in the city 13 years later. I thought that there was going to be more of a plan. And like I said, time is of the essence. A year ago, the merchants told you guys what the effects of the Center Street retail was. As Steve Pennington said, it's postcards from the Titanic. 21,000 people in the entire Snoqualmie Valley isn't enough for us to survive. And like I said,
if you could just quickly.
I sure will. Yeah. Like I said, I'm living out what Mark McDonald has said between minimum wage, between all of these other factors.
All right, thank you, Anna.
Yeah, compared to Bellevue, who has 200,000 people within
Mr.
a
Russell.
5-minute period.
All right, thank you, Anna.
Wayne Russell, 8438 Meadowbrook Way, Southeast. I sort of have the good, the bad, and the ugly tonight, but I'm going to skip the ugly part. So anyhow, the good part is, again, the snow removal team, Don and the gang, they did an awesome job. I had a couple of issues with some of the Facebook stuff. I was really upset because I kept getting hold of the city with Meadowbrook Way because they finally got down to the road. The only trouble is with all the construction workers showing up, even though school wasn't there and the snow was still 8 feet out over the fog line from the mailboxes, is all these guys with their 4x4s and all wheels were piling in there parking. So when you met a car on Meadowbrook, you didn't have room to meet them. So anyhow, I was actually going to do a video. I put my tablet on my dash and I rounded the corner on Meadowbrook and there was a road closed sign. And then I saw a big old ute dump truck and bucket loaders going and I said to my wife, well, I guess I'll turn it off. So I turned it off and I went around the other way. But they did an awesome job of getting it clean. One of the contractors came over with a bucket, helped me clean out the mailbox, and he also shoved a path down alongside so the storm drains could drain. So that was really the good part. Another good part of this is people like Anna that just left giving food to our public works people, because we had citizens like the Little Johns. There was a lot of togetherness out of this whole ordeal. Okay, and now the bad part was tonight, I drove over to the weir because I heard about there was the berm was breached, and not the normal berm I usually complain about, but to the east side of the weir. Well, the water tonight is right up to Meadowbrook or to the Mill Pond Road. And so that is a grave concern because when we flood, the weir, one of the first places the water comes over, but that point in the berm looks lower than the weir. So if that road starts washing out, we're going to have, you'll wash the Mill Pond Road out. That's what's going to happen. I think Public Works has been watching it. Yeah, it is definitely a big issue though, so that's my bad part. I drove over there tonight to look at it, and I won't go into the other incident that happened over there, but it's just, most people will find out about it later. So anyhow, that's about it for tonight, and thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Is there anybody else who would like an opportunity to speak at this time? Any student representatives for the civics class? All right. All right, with that, we'll move on back down to, oh, sorry. I gotta get back on the right agenda here. Community Development Committee, any report?
Just want to report to the council that in our January 14th meeting, the council had asked for the Community Development Committee to look at the timeline and report back with more information about a timeline for the was referred to in the minutes as a marketing plan. I think it means the tourism plan. This is related to a proposal that night for LTAC funding for the visitor center that's in the art gallery for 2019. And we were asked to come back in 30 days with more information about a timeline for that. Because of the snow event, one of the 2 CDC meetings that would have happened during that time frame didn't happen, so we were not able to get through that process. We did have one meeting devoted primarily to this. We believe that at our next committee meeting, we'll have what we need to approve a timeline and come back to you at our next council meeting. So we're planning to come back then. So it's just an update report to you, and that would then allow reconsideration of the visitor center LTAC funding proposal at that point. No other report, Mayor? Oh.
Councilmember Summerall.
Question on that, Councilmember Mayhew. So would you, based on if that timeline holds up, would you propose that be discussed first, and then if that's agreed to by us or is deemed satisfactory, that we would then immediately roll in at that point in time to rediscuss the LTAC funding that was denied, or would we wait another 2 weeks?
Councilmember Mayhew.
I believe that that's what the council is going to recommend, is that exactly the sequence you just mentioned occurs.
I was addressing you. I was just looking at him.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Councilmember Mayhew?
No further report.
All right. Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 19017, Resolution 1479, ratifying the proclamation of emergency for the February 2019 winter storm. Who's our? Brian. Who can read in place of Brian?
Jim, did you need this back?
Someone for the F&A Committee?
Who's on F&A?
We're both on it.
Yeah, which one do you want?
Just read it.
Whoever grabs it first. Go ahead, Councilmember Ross.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, beginning February 8th, 2019, a severe winter storm causing disruption of services, hazardous driving conditions, and flood preparation requiring emergency public safety and public works operations. This constitutes an emergency as defined by the Snoqualmie Emergency Services and Management Plan and necessitates the utilization of emergency power granted pursuant to Snoqualmie Municipal Code, Chapter 2.48, and RCW 35.33.081. Move to adopt Resolution 1479, ratifying the proclamation of emergency for February 2019 winter storm.
I need a second, folks.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 19017 as stated by Councilmember Ross. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, any discussion or questions, Council? Councilmember Sunwall and then Councilmember Shepherd.
So I'm looking at our municipal code 2.48.050A1. As I've read this numerous times, I'm trying to get my head around it. So my understanding is that we don't need council approval for you to initiate the emergency. We just need as quickly as possible afterward to basically ratify the emergency, saying, yeah, it was a smart idea.
Or that it was a real emergency.
Or warranted.
Yeah.
A real emergency. That has different definitions these days. But so is that what we're doing here? It's not expected that you can't act until we gather in some way, shape, or form to do that, right? Am I reading that code right?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is really just the mayor already declared the emergency and had to take certain actions to make sure that things were still functioning during that time of the emergency. And this is just the city council ratifying all of those actions that the mayor authorized to be taken during that time.
So to not ratify it would be essentially say that was either abuse of power or misjudgment or whatever. Is that correct?
I don't know if it would necessarily be considered an abuse of power, but it would basically be undoing all of the contracts or all of the work that was done during that time.
Okay, that's not really possible though, right? I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand the procedural aspect of this, because you can't just undo the snow removal unless Dan's group wants to put it all back.
Right, the purpose is because typically the city council is the body that has the authority to authorize entering contracts and spending the city's money. But during the time, during the emergency, there wasn't an opportunity for the council to make those determinations, so the mayor had to just go ahead and make those determinations to spend money on behalf of the city without council approval. So this is just going back and saying, yes, and we agree that that was okay.
So I guess my only other question then would be, everything was going so smoothly that I found out on social media, not so much on internal email, about contracting with other, we have big loaders and dump trucks going on, which was awesome. At some point, will we see what those contracts were that were entered into?
Yes, we will bring it back to council.
I feel like
We'll
we
bring
would need
back
to
a-
see those before ratifying this.
We'll bring back the full amount. We're trying to, obviously, we're still getting damage assessments done, because we've had obviously some damage that was done to curbs and gutters and sometimes even other facilities. Once the snow leaves, we'll be able to assess more of that and determine exactly what that'd be. So that'll be part of the final tally. But we definitely, we've always brought it back to council under these conditions. We've had floods where we had to bring it back to council. We've had windstorms, we've had snowstorms. And we'll bring this one back as well, a final accounting.
But are these ratified before council typically sees what those contracts are? It just feels a little weird. Again, I trust you guys. Like, it seems everything went great. I'm just trying to be procedural about it in that I'm being asked.
Typically has, only because the language says bring back at the soonest possible.
In a reasonable amount of
opportunity.
time, yeah.
Okay.
That's not to say that these are great questions to ask, and it could be deferred, I suppose, for a couple more weeks, but we're doing our due diligence to bring it back to you as fast as possible. Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, so I just want to say, I just want to reiterate, I believe that all the council members feel this. I guess I'll let them speak for themselves, but I think that the job that you did, Mayor, that the administration did, that the staff did was fantastic. I've heard nothing but good things from the community. I have no reason to believe that you guys haven't done just an absolutely bang-up job on this. Having said that, I'm just trying to understand the exact task that we have, and I have a couple concerns about this. In fact, very significant concerns. The one thing as I read this, our municipal code, is that it appears to me clear that the mayor has the authority to declare this disaster and take a whole series of actions in such a case, and that the mayor does not require, that this does not require the city council to approve that declaration. And I don't like the notion that we introduce some appearance that you needed our approval to make the proclamation when you didn't. You did it appropriately, and I'm supportive of that. But even more, and so I don't like that notion of us providing approval that isn't needed. But more importantly, I think that in section A1, it appears to me that in addition to everything in section 2, all of these necessary actions and measures protect persons, property, natural, it's a wide-ranging set of authority that you're given, I think quite appropriately. But in section 1, it says that you may also issue emergency rules, regulations, and orders. And then it requires that you obtain the confirmation of such emergency rules, regulations, and orders. I don't know right now what emergency rules, orders, or regulations that you issued. I'm pretty sure I'd approve them, but I'd want to know what they are before I approved them. So I'm uncomfortable, and I think I'm concerned that we're actually not doing what this requires us to do, which is specifically confirm any of those things. So I'm all in favor of doing it, but I would like to see the list of what we're confirming. And so I'd rather see us wait until we have that list and then confirm it. I'll just, again, make the point, and I'll just make the point that I'm not aware of anything that I'm not in favor of wholeheartedly that has occurred, but I just think that procedurally we ought to do what the code lays out, and that's my understanding of what I'm reading.
If there's no further comments from council, we can certainly do that. We'll bring it back. I can't say it'll be in 2 weeks because we're gonna get this list together, but we needed to at least present this to council in a reasonable amount of time. We thought we were doing that, but we can certainly wait another couple of weeks, and we can continue the process of listing these things that the couple of councilors have mentioned already. We'd be happy to do that.
So, Mayor?
I'm sorry, I didn't see whose hand was up first. Councilmember Shepherd.
So I think the idea of maybe just saying that we can all agree that there was an emergency, and that later we would, confirm, whatever the bills are, that we agree to pay them when we have a chance to review them. But I'm really glad things got taken care of.
Yeah.
So.
I mean,
That's the only thing, I'd hate to have this be just a blank check, but I don't know that that's what it is.
I don't know how it can be anything but. I mean, because I think they're great questions to ask, and maybe it's a little bit tweaking the code or comparing to what our other municipalities have, because I'm a little confused too, that if I have this authority to do emergency proclamation, do expenditures, that authority is irrevocably given by state and as well as local statute. So this notion that somehow if the council did decide to say, no, there's a bunch of these bills we wouldn't pay, I can assure you, I don't think I'm going to pay it out of my pocket. I don't know how that gets resolved. I mean, these are services that were rendered and money's due. So it does, I think they're good questions. Anyway, Councilmember Mayhew.
So maybe in light of city administrator's comments, maybe I could make a motion that we table this agenda bill for 4 weeks.
Could take a month to compile all the costs or more precisely.
Let me suggest that we could continue it for 2 weeks. We'll keep it on the agenda. We can continue it if we need to again after that. We at least keep it on the agenda. That's okay?
So I move that we table this matter for 2 weeks.
Second.
Motion and a second to table the matter for 2 weeks. Oh.
So actually, to table a matter means that you're tabling it till later in the meeting. So I think you want to do until a date certain.
Postpone to a certain time.
You said 2 weeks.
Okay.
You said 2 weeks in your
I just
motion,
want to
correct?
confirm.
I used a terminology mistake. If I could amend my motion to move to, I'll find it, postpone consideration of this agenda bill for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Oh, second. I was so excited.
Motion and a second as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Any further discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right. I like the idea of at least confirming that was an emergency and then getting the details. Yeah, we'll have to bring back more information on the revenue that's not clear to us. There's some rules that changed on how the federal or state governments in a declaration of emergency compensates, as it used to be for the entire event. Now it's the highest 48 hours. But
Don't they just take the declaration of emergency out of the defense budget? Isn't that how it works?
Something like that, yeah. We're trying to suss that out.
I used to think that the declaration of an emergency was a relatively straightforward notion.
You'd think, yeah. Okay. All right. Any other reports for Finance Administration Committee?
I think warrants.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so backing up to the, thank you, Councilmember Ross, for the reminder. So now moving on to approval of warrants as stated in the agenda packet.
So moved?
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the warrants as stated in the agenda packet. Any discussion, council? Or is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one come forward, any discussion, council? Councilmember Shepherd.
Again, the reason that I keep pulling the warrants out of the consent agenda is because I have questions that have not been answered that I've given to the staff since last March. So that's why I'm pulling the warrants off of the consent agenda, just to make that point, that I'm not getting answers to questions.
Councilmember Ross.
Through the F&A meeting, committee meeting, we did respond to questions she had on, I believe, the first set of warrants, 47, I'm not going to go state the numbers. The second set, which came up the last F&A, she didn't have any questions. So these have been taken care of, the warrants that are listed there.
Okay. I think Councilmember Shepherd was pertaining to questions not relevant to this agenda bill, but as she stated, back to March of last year.
Right, I understand that, but there's no questions on these warrants.
All right. Any other discussion, council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, motion is carried. Again, any other items for Finance Administration Committee?
We didn't have anything else.
Okay. Public Safety Committee report.
I do have one thing. So congratulations to the city of Snoqualmie on winning the Safest City in Washington award. And it's the 4th time receiving this award for safety since 2014. And I think it just represents our excellent service from our police department and the fire department. So nice job.
All right. Moving on to committee of the whole, I don't have any items listed for the committee of the whole unless I'm missing something, so.
There should be two on the agenda.
Yeah, there's
Mayor.
two. There we go, okay. It's not in my notes, sorry.
First one's the public outreach.
Yep.
Regarding public outreach,
Yeah, Councilmember Jeans, go ahead.
council members, you'll remember at our retreat, we had on the agenda public outreach, and we began a discussion about it, and we realized it was an extraordinarily broad subject that we needed to focus on things to go forward. And so we agreed as a council on appointing an ad hoc committee. And I am on that with Sean Sunwell and Peggy Shepard. There are three of us. And during the storms, we met at Sean's office. So we've had one meeting, and the three of us are to put to task to give you an update on what's come out of that. I think something significant has come out of that. Although there are a number of ways we could have gone, we focused on town hall meetings as a way of getting input from the city, getting input from the citizens, giving them an opportunity to tell us what's on their mind. The example of the one town hall meeting that we had last year was good. There were some pluses and minuses regarding who attended. Was it a broad base of attendees? And so that is a concern, that we want to get people who might not otherwise express themselves with regard to what's on their mind in their neighborhood. And so we thought the idea of a town hall meeting was good. We thought, I'll refer to them as to whether we essentially are taking this recommendation to you, but we thought that we would recommend 4 town hall meetings. In other words, quarterly meetings with giving the public a general opportunity to come to us. The idea of the town hall meeting, constructive things were that it was not a city agenda at City Hall kind of a thing, that it was the agenda would be what the public wants to talk about, and we would address those things. So it would be an effective reach out, and we all know that we want to know what people think, not just what people come to this meeting and for the 2 minutes that each of them have to express themselves. There needs to be an opportunity for more people with a broader spectrum of things that are important to them. So the idea is the town hall meetings ought to be in different sections of the town so that it is convenient, so that people are talking about what they want to talk about. And I think we generally thought that we should have one as soon as possible in the area of the park on the top of the ridge, because there have been a lot of, I'll call them rumors, have been spread regarding we have concerted plans to put lighting in that park for soccer and for other things. So it would be a nice opportunity to get a broad range of people from that neighborhood to come to us and to tell us what they think, and to tell us other things that are on their mind, and so that we would be, as a council, we would be good listeners, and as a council, we would have a greater opportunity to respond to the things that matter to the citizens of Snoqualmie.
Councilmember Sunwell.
Yeah, so just that was great. There was absolute unanimity between the three of us on the need to do this. As Bob said, it's every 2 weeks we urge the public to come to us, and I think the theme out of this was we're going to go to the people. And one of the thoughts we had around that, for example, was because of this issue, not that we want to spend 2 hours talking about lights, because I actually think it's about a 10-minute conversation, because it's nowhere on anybody's priority list, but if nothing else, to dispel rumors around that. But so, for example, the folks in the Eagle Point neighborhood, right? Could we have a meeting at trees. What's it called? The elementary school. Timber Ridge. Timber Ridge Elementary School, where TRES. You know, that's what they cut down to build the school, get it? So the idea would be that we find some other community place where it's, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you've got small kids and you have the choice of going down where your kids might go to school anyway versus all the way down here, that can be a big deal. So we're trying to remove as many of the barriers as possible because the people we hear from proactively tend to be the same group of 10, 20, 30 people, right? And those are very, very important opinions. But we often aren't able to extract from, in fact, I would suggest, on a population basis, the Ridge is actually dramatically underrepresented in these types of meetings. And so we would think of things, whether it's using a school, or the YMCA. I even thought if we use the YMCA, they have built-in babysitting. My daughter's one of those that does that for a job there. Are there opportunities to provide those types of things that would allow what I call the stroller moms and stroller dads who have younger kids to be able to attend where otherwise they would not be able to? So these are just kind of the ideas that we're thinking. You know, Bob, I don't know if you just thought of this. I don't recall it coming out of the meeting, but the idea if you could pick a community, not that, I mean, anybody could come to the quote-unquote Eagle Point town hall meeting, right? But if you could circulate ahead of time, almost what we did over here, where you ask for submission ideas about what we could talk about, and then based on the feedback we get, we could come prepared to address some number of those that's reasonable, and then have that conversation. And if you move it around to different places, I think you're going to tend to attract different segments of your population, right? You're going to get a different segment of population at Two Rivers. Trees. Than you are, for example, at TPC. Not saying we should hold one at TPC. I'm just saying you're going to get different crowds. And all of those opinions are super important. I care deeply about what the TPC audience wants, just as much as I care deeply about what, you know, families in our community that have elementary school age children care about. And I just don't feel like we're extracting that well enough from them. Not so much because it's our fault. It's just, you know, kids got to take people to soccer practice and all kinds of crazy stuff. People are just busy, right? And if life is pretty good, then you're not going to prioritize a town hall meeting, especially if it doesn't have food, which was another thing we talked about, over making sure your family gets dinner or kids get to soccer practice. And so that's a really long-winded way of saying we came up with a handful of criteria that if you're okay with it, we would like to continue that ad hoc committee and start planning the first one. So Jim, before you jump in, let me just rattle off a few of the things that we thought were good. Have a consistent start time. Let's say it's 7 o'clock, making sure 6 o'clock feels a little bit early for people coming home from work. Make them 90 minutes. Record them. Okay, maybe not video, but at least audio, so that those who still aren't able to come will be able to listen to what was happening. Refreshments. Can we provide babysitting? We talked about quarterly. We talked about attendees. Is it just a council one, or do we have the mayor come, or have him not come? Right. And so those are the kind of the bullets that we had talked about. And again, with the permission of the majority of the council, we would love to continue the little ad hoc committee and start planning the next one. Did you have anything else, Peggy?
No, I just would like to do it in the communities. I think we need to push out, and right now it's kind of not very nice weather to do it in a park, but looking at what the city of Issaquah does, sometimes they have hot dogs in the park, and they bring their park people and whatever's coming up in their community as far as development projects, just to make the neighbors aware of what's coming on the horizon for their community. And I think that this would be a nice way of just letting people know what's on the horizon.
Councilor Mayhew.
I was just going to ask, maybe the committee members could talk a little bit about whether they envision, because some of the language, I wasn't exactly clear what you were thinking, whether you envisioned having city staff there. So when I think of giving answers, generally the council members don't have answers to a whole lot.
You shouldn't have said that.
For specifics.
True.
What we have is the ability to try and get staff to get those answers, right? And so And then we have the ability, hopefully, to try and make good decisions with those answers. So to me, it's one thing to sit with citizens and hear their concerns, which I very much want to do, to even have a dialogue about those concerns, but to actually go to the level of trying to give answers, you know, unless it's something that we've had a chance to prepare with, and then even maybe we still need staff, but often we'd need staff to really be able to give answers. So what's the flavor you were thinking, and do you envision having staff there, or is this more of an information gathering, just kind of a discussing with the idea that we take that away and somehow get back to people later, or kind of what were your thoughts on that?
I respond to that. Councilmember will say, and then I'll come to you, Councilmember Summer.
It's on the similar line of discussion. I actually love this idea. Let's do it, you know, as soon as possible. And although my fellow council member tried to explain something, I think what he was trying to get to maybe was council has the ability to influence policy. And policy doesn't require answers. Policy requires thought and input from the community. So whether or not staff is there, I want to hear your input on whether you talked about it, but whether or not staff is there, I think to me is irrelevant, because to me, the town hall meetings are about taking community input, taking community thoughts on various topics as input to us to then have discussions about policy. So,
yeah. So I forgot to mention almost the most important part. So we did not, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did not envision having city staff there. I mean, we even debated whether to have the mayor there. So the idea there being, Julie, the idea being that this is very much a listening session. There might be some general feedback or guidance, but then that we would follow up with, call it a month later. There would be a one-pager or whatever. There would be a follow-up if there were specific questions that we could go back to staff, have them answer, and then there would be some published document that was kind of the results of that meeting, right? And some might require action, some might not, but the idea being that it is by no circumstance are we expected to have a bunch of answers to questions. This is ideally us with an opportunity to listen, right? And this is sort of a listening tour, I guess is what some people would call it. But there would be absolutely an expectation, there would be a reporting back. Because the only thing worse than not having a town hall meeting is having a town hall meeting where opinions are expressed and questions are asked, and then nothing ever happens after that, which is sadly very common in politics and frankly any organization. So there was absolutely that expectation that there would be that follow-up.
I would add another potential danger, and that is a worst thing that could happen is to have a town hall meeting and take actions on what was heard, only to find out that you were responding to voices that did not reflect the majority of the community in and so that's a risk that you need to keep in mind.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, I kind of go back to my statistical days where, again, if you're doing statistical sampling where you're trying to accurately measure or gauge the majority of your residents, the folks that'll show up to a town hall meeting are usually of a different kind of cut than or demographic than those, that might not necessarily attend. So Councilmember Mahan and Councilmember Shepherd.
Well, in answer to the question, I think this all sounds fantastic, and I'd like to encourage this ad hoc committee to continue your work and come back with specifics and how we might implement this and other ideas you might come up with. This sounds like great progress. And I certainly encourage or agree with where you're headed.
Good. I'm going to do round robin and come back, Councilmember Shepherd. I haven't heard from Councilmember Ross, and I'll come back to you.
Okay. I love the idea of the town hall meeting and the listening town halls, but I can also see it as a tool for specific projects in the future where we can gather input from our residents. So we shouldn't just limit it to this. We can use it for other purposes as well.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I hear the comment about how when people who come to our meetings, it's not statistically significant when they speak. I'm having trouble with that when we have an option of the few people that show up versus not hearing from anybody. So I guess between the two, as far as statistical significance, I would say the people who show up is more statistically significant than those who don't say anything. We have no information from those who don't say anything.
Well, actually, that's a good segue to another, what I wanted to clarify. What I certainly did not make my comment to sound cynical, like you shouldn't seek input. The tool and the style I've usually done, and I was actually going to encourage the council to give some thought to doing a citywide survey again, or do those on a fairly regular basis, maybe even yearly. The power of that tool is you can take that into your town hall meetings then. And sometimes when I've used that pulse pad technology, which is even easier now because you can just tell people to pull the cell phone out of their pocket and vote on things. And Councilmember Shepherd, I'm not just kind of pulling that out of air, and it's not an opinion, it's a fact, that when I take a community survey and I throw it up on a screen, and I ask the same question of, say, 15, 20, or 50 people that show up in a room, there are many times, about 50% of the time, the answers to those in the room is not consistent with the residents, the statistical sampling of the entire community. Sometimes it's on, many times it's not. And the crowd doesn't get angry because of that. They come to appreciate the complexity and difficulty of our jobs, which is, oh, now I can see why you have to be a little cautious by not reacting to a group that's necessarily a small group of people that's in front of you, because they might not be reflective of the community. So all I'm saying is that there's other tools we can use to make sure to use all those tools in the toolbox, those town hall meetings, everything else, but make sure you're doing it in a way that you don't lose track of taking that larger pulse of the majority. Councilmember Sunwell.
So I appreciate the math exercise. I'm terrible at math and statistics. So I feel like, unless Peggy or anybody else disagrees, I feel like we've gotten broad support to continue meeting as an ad hoc committee to plan out what would be I guess the second one, but the first one kind of this new committee. And so if that's the case, then I think we can probably move on and save the math for later. Is that maybe when I'm not here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right, so moving on to the other item, transportation improvements and transportation capital maintenance fund. I know you were talking to the Mayor Pro Tem, Bob, about this.
I spoke to Mayor Pro Tem Holloway about this, and we added it to the agenda last week. When F&A met last Wednesday, there was discussion about having some time available to maybe pick up on another topic, and I proposed this one. I would like, though, to request that council put this off for 2 weeks, given the Mayor Pro Tem's absence. He was very interested in this topic, and we obviously want to have him here for this.
And we do have an executive session that's going to probably take at least 20 minutes, so.
That's fine. No objection.
Fine.
All right. Okay, so with that, are there any other announcements before we wrap up? The reports at the first or second meeting of the month are written, as you can see in your agenda packet. However, are there any other questions for or from the staff at this time, or comments? Dan?
So Mr. Russell is absolutely correct, and thank you for reminding me. There were several homeowners. I literally have lost track how many came down to the garage with treats and things for the guys. Pizzas from Uncle Size. Lorenzo's, thank you. And Frankie's Pizza, and it was just amazing with how many homeowners reached out and asked, what can we do? Donuts and coffee, and it was just all kinds of things. So I did want to, thank the public and just let the council know, and then thank you, Mr. Russell, for reminding me.
Any other comments, questions from the staff at this time? Any announcements? Council, I will be going down to Covington, presenting to the Covington City Council tomorrow night, trying to make a pitch at a meeting a couple weeks ago with the three of the members of the Maple Valley Council, and pertaining to see if I could get them to do some cost share on the interchange improvements or the temporary improvements during the construction. And so that was received well, or I think positively to this point, and be presenting to the Covington City Council meeting tomorrow night. Councilmember Shepherd, you had a question? Or?
Yeah, I wanted to know what the status of the environmental impact statement is for mill site.
We have not received one.
All right. Okay, with that, at this time, we're going to be going into an executive session followed by a closed session. due to potential conflicts of interest, the acting city attorney will not be in the closed session, so we'll start with the executive session. At this time, we'll go into executive session regarding a real estate transaction pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, Section 1B. That will last approximately 10 minutes, and I'm sorry, might there be action following?
No. Nicole, excuse me.
And ask that...
The action following, perhaps? No, okay. I don't think so.
Yeah, Bob Larson, Mark Hoffman, Nicole Sanders, Anne Marie Soto, and, I'm sorry, this executive session could take as long as 20 minutes. And then that'll be followed by a closed session pursuant to RCW 42.30.140, Section 4B regarding professional negotiations. Request the presence of Bob Larson, Perry Phipps.
Let's do it.
And that should take about 15 minutes. So with that, everybody else gets to go home for the evening. Thank you.
You stay in here.
Just stay in here.